What up, kinfolk? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you guys the story of how I learned how to hear God's voice. The journey that I went through from when I first turned my life over to God and moved to Indiana, and my process in learning how to hear God's voice. So if you are interested in hearing that story, then keep on watching. Okay, well, let's see. Where do I begin? If you have not seen the video about how and why I turned my life over to the Lord, then go ahead and watch it. I'll put a card here, wherever they pop up, and you can click on that to watch that video, which will give you a little bit more detail about how I got to the point to where I even chose to give my life over to God in the first place. In that video, I explained how I got to Indiana, because Indiana is kind of where it all started for me. So when I moved to Indiana, I was the kind of person that always had to be hanging out with somebody and I couldn't ever be alone. But I went from always hanging around people to not having anybody to hang out with because I was in this new place. I didn't know anybody. All I had was my family. I hung out with my mom, a lot. We went out all the time, went to dinner, went shopping. We drove to Indy, which was an hour away, and did that kind of stuff. But I didn't have any friends to kick it with. I didn't have anyone to really spend a lot of time with in terms of friendships. So I was forced to do things by myself, and I was forced to be alone. I worked at a salon. I got the job, actually, the salon that I worked at when I first moved to Indiana. I got that job before I moved. So I was set, kind of met people that way. But I went to church by myself every single week. I went to a church in Bloomington, a mega church that was similar to Willow Creek. Well, close enough to Willow Creek. I wanted so bad to go to a church like that because that church changed my life and changed my perspective about church. So I found this church. So I started going to their Saturday evening services that they had at the time called 629. And it was really chill. Like, the atmosphere was awesome. The worship was amazing. The sermons were really great. Like, it was just wonderful. So I kept going. And then they got rid of 629. And then I started going on Sunday mornings. And I went by myself. And eventually, what happened? So I started doing this woman's hair. Her name was Wendy. And Wendy was a client of mine for years and years. And I think I started doing her hair. I did her hair for a long time. And I knew she went to Sherwood Oaks. She sang at Sherwood Oaks. Beautiful voice. And I loved listening to her sing. She and I would talk all the time about God and while I did her hair, and we had the best conversation. And then one day, randomly, years after I think it was years after I started doing her hair, I knew her for a while, she said she wanted to start a Bible study. I guess some of their people in their group fell out, so she wanted to kind of rebuild this group. So she asked me if I wanted to be a part of it, and I was like, yeah, because she's a fun person. So I was like, absolutely, I'll try it. And at that point, I was putting myself out there more. The Lord was forcing me to put myself out there more. So I did. And I started going to this group. And there were 4 of us. There was Wendy, there was Paul, there was Eric, and then myself. And Eric is still one of my dear friends who I love so much. And so we started having these Bible studies every week. And they were awesome. Like, I loved it. Everybody was just so fun and funny, and we just clicked, and we enjoyed being with each other. We enjoyed the conversation. Our conversations just got so deep, and I love to be intellectually stimulated. So having these conversations about God was exhilarating to me. I was learning so much. It was just great. And Eric and I clicked. Like, that was my best friend at the time. Like, that was my homie. We hung out all the time. So it was just a fun group. All the people in this group were on a praise team. So the praise teams at that church kind of go in a rotation. So you're all on a team and you rotate together. So you would sing like once a month together or something like that. I think it was once a month at the time. But anyway, long story short, Wendy said that she would talk to the worship leader, who was Phil Coleman. So shout out to Phil if you're watching, because I know I see you commenting on my Instagram. But Phil was the worship leader at that time. So I was super scared because Wendy was like, I'll talk to Phil and see if you can be a part of our team. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to sing by myself? I had never been on a praise team before, but I was so excited because I was like, oh my gosh, like if I could be on a team, like the worship team that changed my perspective about worship, then yes. Willow Creek in Barrington, the church that I went to for the first time with my mom, that transformed my walk with the Lord. I mean, it was amazing. I was just blown away. So this kind of had that same feel. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be a part of this. Like, I want to be a part of this. So she got me an audition with Phil, and I sang, what did I sing? I sang what everybody sang at the time. Darlene Check at that time was Hillsong. Like, I think she was Hillsong worship at the time. And I sang, what did I sing? I sang one of like the most popular songs of hers. I don't know if it was Lord, I Give You My Heart, or if it was, I forgot what it's called. But it was like one of the most popular songs at the time. And I sang that, and he gave me the thumbs up. And I got on the team. So we were now not only a Bible study group together, but we were also on the same worship team. And I had so much fun with them. Like, it was awesome. Those were awesome memories because we had a blast. But not only did we worship together, we studied the Bible together, but we also went on experiences together. We went to the Passion Conference. Gosh, what year was that? 2006? Maybe? I don't know. There'll be pictures up though. But we went to the Passion Conference, and it was amazing. It was called, like, I think the theme of that conference, that particular Passion Conference, it was in Nashville, Tennessee. It was called Glorious. It was amazing. And that was the first time I ever went to a Christian conference, and I was mind blown. So at that time, Eric was really heavily involved in the high school ministry. Eric and I were best friends. So I wanted to be a part of the high school ministry. It's something that I'd never done before, but God used that to transform me. And so I got really involved with the high school ministry. I went to every single high school event. I went on all of the high school trips. I was so involved in the high school ministry. I was involved in leading Bible study groups and stuff like that. At this point in my life, I was like listening to all those, huge big time pastors, and they're like, the Lord told me this, the Lord spoke to me, and I heard the Lord say, and I'm like, I want to hear what God's saying. Like, I don't know how to hear, like, how do you do that? So I kind of went on this mission to learn how to hear God's voice. And Wendy had invited me to come to this, I forgot what it's called, but it was like a women's conference, like a smaller women's conference that was held at the church. And so I went, and there was a book there called Invitation to Solitude in Silence. So I bought the book, and I started reading it, and it basically just it gave you instructions on how to position yourself to hear God's voice. And so I listened and I followed the instructions, and basically it was just, start small with like 5 minutes, and every single day have some quiet time and just sit in silence with a notebook. Tell the Lord, speak to me, God, I'm here, I'm listening, I want to hear your voice, and just try not to let your mind wander too much. So it said if you start to feel your mind wander, just kind of refocus and say, Jesus, help me to refocus my mind, I'm here, speak to me. And start with 5 minutes, bring your Bible with you, and maybe meditate on a scripture or something. So I started doing that. I just felt in those times with him, as I was learning how to hear his voice, I just felt that the Lord had something so big for me, and I didn't really know how to get it. And especially like, wow, how old was I? Gosh, how old am I now? I was in my early 20s, like 21, I was like 22, maybe 23. So I did that every single day, and I was literally praying about everything. I'm like, okay, God, do I turn left or do I turn right? Okay, God, should I wear this or should I wear this? And some people are like, God doesn't care what you wear. God doesn't care which way you turn. But I don't know, like I was just practicing. It's all about exercising it. You have to exercise things in order to get better at them. So I was exercising my ability to hear his voice by asking him all of these little things. And it's like, Lord, do I turn left or do I turn right? Like, you never know when the Lord's protecting you from a car accident. So the Lord will tell you which way to turn if you ask him. Or if you feel like he's nudging you in a different direction, you better go, because you just don't ever know what the Lord is protecting you from. So anyway, I was exercising that, and I was really starting to be able to hear him, and pretty clearly, I feel like. In 2005, that was when Katrina hit. The church was going on a mission trip to Pascagoula, Mississippi for Katrina relief. And Eric was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, that'll be so cool. We can do this together. It'll be so awesome. And at this point, there were 13 men going on this trip, and I was the only woman going. And I felt the Lord speak to me. He said, and I understand why now, because I feel like the Lord was trying to take me out of my comfort zone and trying to seclude me so that he can really get to me, you know? So I felt like the Lord said to me, I know the Lord said to me, Shanna, you're going to know for sure that you're supposed to go, because I was asking God for signs, for clarity, when Eric backs out of it. And I was like, no, he's not going to back out. Like, that's not going to happen. Ring, ring, ring. Hey, Shanna, I hate to do this, but I'm not going to be able to go on this mission trip. And I'm like, no, don't do that to me. So in that moment, as soon as Eric called me and told me that he couldn't go, I knew for sure that I was supposed to go. And I was mad because I was going to be the only woman with 13 men road tripping, mind you. So we were in this van, and there's 13 older men. I don't even know how young the youngest one was, but I was only 22 or 23 years old. And I'm going on this road trip, a 13 to 15 hour drive to Mississippi with all these old men. So I'm like having all these nightmares. I'm like, oh my gosh, someone's going to rape me. All these things, which, obviously was Satan. But I was really upset and I was terrified because I didn't want to be the only girl. I didn't know anybody else. I didn't want to go on this by myself, but I knew that I had to. So I did. And I got in the back of this caravan and I'm like praying. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. I was so mad. Like, I did not want to go. I was terrified. I'd never done anything like this before, let alone by myself with all these men. I ended up going, and we literally worked. We shingled roofs from sun up to sundown for 5 full days. It was so hard, but it was the best experience. Like one of the older guys, I forgot his name now, but he was so awesome, and he basically took me under his wing like his child. And he sat in the back with me, and he was just so sweet and very protective, and it was really nice and comforting. But also I gained the respect. So there was like a guy who was a Navy SEAL who was there, and I think they looked at me and they were like, this little girl, like this little prissy girl. And once we got on those roofs and I learned how to shingle them, man, I was zipping through them. I was working right next to the general contractor who was in charge of the whole trip. And I was just hammering out these shingles. Like, I was doing my thing. I gained mad respect by the end of that trip. It was such an amazing experience. And I grew so much in that time. The church that hosted us too was awesome. And I got my own room while the other guys had to sleep in the sanctuary, which they really treated me well. And it was one of the biggest and bravest things that I've ever done. I definitely must say it is. And the Lord asked me to go, and I went. Then in 2007, there was another mission opportunity that the church was hosting. And Eric was like, let's go. They're going to Ghana, Africa with an organization in Indianapolis called Fame. It was basically just people from all over the world really can come and be a part of it. And we were going to meet in Africa and do a medical mission. So it was a medical mission trip. And Eric was like, let's go, let's go. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. It's like 2 weeks. I have to raise all this money. So Eric and I were planning on going on this mission trip to Ghana, Africa together. So now I have to raise all this money. It's almost $3,000, I think, that I have to raise. And I'm like, okay, Lord, if you want me to go, then you're going to have to provide the money. So again, in this situation, I heard the Lord say, because I'm asking for clarity, like, Lord, if you don't want me to go, I don't want to go. But if you do want me to go, I need you to make it clear. And the Lord again said, when Eric backs out of this trip, that's how you know that I want you to go. And I was like, what? No, but I don't want to go by myself. I don't know anybody else going. And he goes, Shanna, I want you to go on this trip. When Eric calls you to back out, there's your confirmation. I'm like, oh. Ring, 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 ring. Hey, Shanna, I'm sorry to do this to you again, but I'm not going to be able to go to Africa on this trip. I'm so bummed. And I'm like, oh, gosh, I don't want to do this. So then I'm mad again. I'm like, okay, Lord, fine. If you want me to go on this trip, then you need to give me the money to do it. And so I'm like telling my clients about it. A bunch of people gave me money to go, and I needed like $1,000 more. I raised a lot of money. A lot of my clients were so awesome and gave me money towards this mission trip. And I needed $1,000 more. And I'm just like, if I can't get this money, Lord, I can't go. So if you want me to go, Lord, then you need to give me the money, Lord. And I have like this big attitude. So I asked my church for money to help me go, and they gave me all of it, $1,000. They gave me $1,000 to go on this trip, and it was paid in full by the Lord. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go by myself. And I'm terrified. So then the time comes, and I have to leave, and I'm like planning, I'm getting all my shots and like all this prep in order to leave the country and all this stuff. But everything was so easy. Like I knew that the Lord wanted me to go, and I didn't know anybody on this trip. I knew of one person, but I didn't know anybody. And it was terrifying for me because I'm used to, I grew up always being around people all the time. And now I'm like, I feel like I'm in this by myself. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And like, you have me out here, Lord, stranded, doing everything alone. You want me to go to another country, not knowing anybody else? Really? And he said, yes, really. So we go, and I am pushed so far out of my comfort zone. And it was the most amazing trip. And I'm forced to meet new people, and I'm forced to make new friends, and I'm forced out of my comfort zone. I have to fake it till I make it, but I learned how to just like hit action, go, be uncomfortable, but get it done, meet the people, and I felt so liberated. It was amazing. So we spent 2 weeks in Africa on these medical mission trips, going to, I think we went to 3 different villages to provide medical needs for people. Obviously, I have no medical background, but I was just, guiding people where they need to go, just helping out in whatever way that I could. It was the most amazing experience. And I felt after that trip, my mom didn't want me to go either, but I was like, I have to go. The Lord told me to. And she was so proud of me. But I came back feeling like I could conquer the world. I'm like, I freaking went to Africa on a 2-week medical mission trip by myself, without knowing anybody. I can do anything now. Those 2 mission trips were really huge for me because it was just the Lord's way of really developing me and giving me strength and courage and clarity that, yes, you do hear me correctly. You do know how to hear my voice. I think those were the biggest things that kind of helped to develop me. And then as the years go on, my relationship with the Lord only gets stronger. I feel like I've gone through a lot in my life, and I feel like every single thing that I've gone through has just made me better. But those years going to Sherwood Oaks Church, and, those were some of the best years for me. That was the foundation for me. And that was what propelled me to where I am today. And that is how I learned how to hear God's voice. And now I hear God really clearly. I really do. And my marriage was huge because I doubted myself for a while because, you know, we all make mistakes and I made some big mistakes and I started doubting myself and I never really I always felt like maybe I'm hearing incorrectly. And, you know, the Lord has really shown me that I hear him. I hear him clearly. It's just been a really crazy ride and the best ride of my life. Like, I don't know, moving to Indiana for me was the absolute best decision that I could have ever made. I don't necessarily want to stay here forever. I am excited about all of the things that the Lord has for me in the future, but up until this point, I'm so proud of myself. Like, thinking about how I was when I was young and where I came from, my attitude, my thought process when I was younger, before I turned my life to the Lord, and even in my baby Christian years, all I've gone through and how much I have grown and developed, and the things that the Lord took me through to get me to where I am today, it's pretty mind-blowing. And I'm so proud of it though. Like, I love who the Lord has created me to be. If it wasn't for all of my experiences, my successes, and my failures, then I would not be who I am. And I'm just so grateful. Like, the experiences I've had, like going on these mission trips and being exposed, like the Lord really connected me with some amazing people who have challenged my faith and who have grown, who helped me grow. It was just beautiful. Like, the journey was hard in a lot of ways, but so beautiful. Like, even thinking back on it, I just feel like those were really challenging times, but so beautiful. And I'm so grateful for them. So I guess that is probably about it. That's how I learned how to hear God's voice. And those are some of the things that the Lord kind of told me to do that transformed my walk with him. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give this a big thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe, and help me to continue growing my family. Bye, guys.